Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What
talk.
a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horne, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
You're good players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Good evening. Welcome to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, editor of Tiger Rag Magazine. I'm joined by Todd Horne, executive vice president and executive editor of Tiger Rag. Jeff Palermo is on vacation. And we have a good string of guests here coming up. Blake Ruffino is going to talk some LSU football and baseball with us. Then we're going to have Herb Vincent from the SEC office. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame over the weekend in Natchitoches. We're going to have national championship pitching coach Nate Yeskie at about 7 o'clock. He was supposed to be with us last week, but we had some technical difficulties. And Wilson Alexander from the Baton Rouge Advocate, great sports writer, is going to talk to us about the new revenue sharing strike in football, college football today.
Today.
Yes. How what did you think of that as it developed over the last couple of weeks, Todd?
Well, I mean, it was long anticipated. In fact, it delayed over and over again because the judge wouldn't approve it, and they had to make some minor tweaks to it. So it was expected, and I think it actually came in a little bit later than they thought. But the schools, for the most part, certainly LSU was prepared for it, and they were operating as if it was going to be in play today. They did the front loading of NIL deals for 2025, so they wouldn't have to pass through the clearinghouse, and so that was a good thing. Certainly for LSU football this year, if they're going to have any chance of making the college football playoffs, they had to get those deals done. And they brought in that number one transfer portal class. And, Garrett Nussmeier was down at the Manning Passing Academy talking about how they're putting the internal pressure on themselves to be in the college football playoffs. But yeah, LSU, the interview with Wilson it's a long one, and then we're going to break it into two parts, but it's very informative, and I think it's very interesting. We cover all the elements of how LSU is effectively dealing with that right now. And he had conversations with Deputy Athletic Director Kelly Zinn, who's also the COO under Scott Woodward, and she has all the financial information, and so we were able to get that. In fact, I think she'll be on our show next week by herself, but Wilson had a great conversation with her and several other people within the LSU athletic department, so we got the full rundown on how they opened up this morning's office, so to speak, and in this new era.
Well, what I find hard to, that's kind of shocking still that LSU was going to be $8 million in the red.
Yeah, so because of the revenue sharing, they are forecasting, and we get into that in the interview with Wilson, which will be on at the 7:30 segment. So in the second hour at the 7:30 segment. But yeah, they're facing an $8 million deficit, and that's after finishing last year with over $200 million in revenue and slightly over a $1 million, profit. This year they're projecting $8 million loss, but they think they're going to have a lot of new revenue opportunities through sponsorships and things that we'll get into in the course of the interview that will help them balance the budget, so to speak, by 2027.
Well, college baseball is over. I mean, this is our second show since they won the national championship, and they had a national championship celebration the night after our show, which was really awesome. I mean, the crowd there looked like a super regional crowd. It really did. It's just amazing.
And I didn't go to it, but I heard they were extremely enthusiastic, and that you said it was like a super regional in terms of size, but also in terms of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's really well done. Of course, LSU knows how to do that. That's number 8 they've done it. It's funny. I went to a little LSU party the night of the championship game. Herb snuck me in, and I was talking with Bill Frank. As you know, Kelly Zinn was there, and all these LSU athletic director administration people were in there, and I was talking to Bill, and Bill was going over the list of where the national championship celebrations were. You know, some were in Tiger Stadium, others were in Alex Box. And it got so hot. You know, some of them were in the Assembly Center. You know, and now they're in the new box. But they really know how to do that.
Yeah, and what was impressive was that they already had the 2025 championship insignia on a lot of the walls and decorations, and of course the new Intimidator was up. Of course, that's not the real Intimidator. They're going to replace. They just put a temporary Intimidator up, saluting the 2025 national champions, but it'll be included like the old Intimidator.
But not the same one is not going to.
The one that was up for the ceremony was a unique one just for the ceremony.
And that's not going to be put up there. They got another one.
They got another one that comes back that lists all the Intimidators. But the question is, and we're, by the way, we're efforting to get Blake Ruffino on right now. He was scheduled to come on at this time, but apparently we haven't connected with him yet. But you've been covering baseball as well as anybody all season long. Jay Johnson sounds like he's intent to make it back to Omaha next year and bring home number 9.
Yeah, well, he's only 48 and he's already got 2, and I mean, he's going to have a shot to get to 5. That Skip left. And I remember I told you that the other day, and you said, "But can he get 5 in 10 years?" That's going to be difficult. But I mean, he's going to have a shot because he really knows how to navigate the portal. He did have an off year last year. I mean, there even if you're great at the portal, there's going to be cycle years. And he didn't have quite the talent in 24. But, he got close to hosting at LSU. So he had a real good chance of going 3 straight years. But he's just really a good recruiter and identifying players and developing them. And Nate Yeskie, who we're going to talk to at about 7, I mean, he finally got a pitching coach to stay over for the second year because the other guys were getting better jobs. And I think you really saw some results from that. Like Bill Franquez said, I think he was with Jacques Doucette on Jacques' interview this week. They expected Cade to be in the rotation, but they didn't expect him to be the best pitcher in the country, And it's just amazing the development of some of the players under Jay and Yeskie.
Well, what about the development of Ianson, too? I mean, certainly Cade's the big story because he's probably going to be the number 1 pick in the Major League Baseball draft coming up based on the season that he had this year and the improvement he made. But Anthony Ianson came from basically a mid-major type of school out there in the Pac, whatever it was, whatever UC San Diego, whatever.
Western Athletic Conference,
or
maybe,
something like
yeah.
That. But that's nowhere near the SEC, and he didn't have near the strikeouts or the command over and the mastery over the players he was facing that he did in the SEC this year. He finished second in the country in strikeouts, or third in the country in strikeouts. Yeah. So his improvement couldn't have been something that they calculate. They might have thought he was going to be a good player, good pitcher for them, and key to their rotation. But I don't think neither Jay nor Nate or anybody could have expected him to perform at the level he did all year. So when you combine the two of those, Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, we talked all season about that's the number 1, the top 1-2 punch in the country. Well, they really were.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the big difference. And then, of course, the emergence of Case and Evans, and the Chase Shores turning his season around. So when we talk with Nate, it's going to be interesting to hear how he thinks he can duplicate that next year. And they've already started. They've already brought in 3 left-handers from the transfer portal.
Right, relievers, and then the Tennessee lefty didn't pitch last year. But I was really impressed with how Chase developed in kind of his second season, because he came in as a third starter. He lost that and then gradually built himself back into the bullpen. But he wasn't good, really, until late in the season. And I think the true mark of coaching is how good guys get toward the end of the season. And I'm really anxious to see what kind of job Nate can do with William Schmidt, because, I think they expect William Schmidt has a great record in stats, but they expected him to do more this season. He had a lot of walks and he didn't do well in the SEC. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they get him turned around and he's in the SEC rotation next year. Kind of like Cade Anderson is a little different. He struggled last year. He had a 27 ERA in the SEC, but he got better in the postseason, and then he was ready when the season came around. So,
but the big key for Cade in the offseason was the development of 2 more pitches, basically,
right,
to add to his arsenal, plus getting stronger and just getting wiser and understanding what's going on the field in competition, as Nate's talked about before. But I just I kind of look at Schmidt, and you were right, he had great stats, but it was all against midweek, and he had control problems, and anytime he was put into any type of slightly leverageable situation, in a meaningful situation or a meaningful game, he had to basically get bailed out because he couldn't. He just didn't have the control. But I think he was probably. I think you can make the argument that he was further along this year than Cade was last year as a freshman.
Oh yeah, I would say so. And they got a lot of good players coming back, man. I mean, Derek Curiel in left field, and
were you surprised that Ashton Larson left? He entered the transfer portal, as you know, yesterday. So.
I was a little bit, because I think he has a chance to start in the outfield this coming season. But he might have got offered a lot of money, and like LSU's money is, like a lesser school, even just a lesser SEC school. They probably don't have the payroll LSU has, so they can throw more money at Ashton. Maybe I'm just guessing, But maybe he just wanted a change, But yeah, it did surprise me a little bit, because he's a guy, unlike all the other guys who entered the portal, he's a guy that was pretty important this season, and you could see becoming a starter next season. And he's the only guy who entered the portal who was a starter 2 years ago.
Right. So they've had 8 enter the portal as of right now, including Larson. Is that
correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So you're right. He's the only one that had any meaningful playing time on the team. But what does the outfield look like? You were talking about Curiel and left. I bet you Curiel moves to center unless Stanfield comes back.
Yeah, Chris Stanfield could come back into center. Jake Brown is probably going to be in right. One of the transfers they got probably at first base, maybe one of them at second base. Stephen Milam will return at shortstop. Tanner Reeves at third. Cade Ehrenbeid behind the plate. Plus they got a new catcher coming in that they signed out of high school. And, there's some guys we don't know about that they're going to get that might not get drafted. So, we still don't know their lineup.
So, but you think that he's got – I mean, Jay was on the show last week and talked while you were in the air, still coming back from Omaha, and he said he feels very comfortable with the core and the nucleus of this team.
I would not bet against them going to Omaha. I would not. We're going to take a break and be right back with more Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
Tiger Rag Radio. The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio here at the Super Chevy Dealers Studio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag editor, with Todd Horne, Tiger Rag executive editor. We were unable to get Blake Ruffino. We're going to try to get him on later in the show or soon. We're going to talk a little football, but it's July 1st, right? Today, July 1st.
New era of college sports.
And LSU baseball is over. That was the last sport of the that athletic semester of 2025-2026. So, are you already into football?
I am, because I'm conditioned that way. So it goes like this. When you're a kid and you play football and usually you play basketball and you play baseball too, and so the American Legion baseball season as a kid usually wraps up by the first week of July around this time.
Unless it's All-Stars.
Well, if you go on a travel team
Yeah.
or in the All-Stars, right. But, I mean, as far as the regular season, it starts wrapping up. So as a kid growing up, as soon as baseball season ended, which even the All-Stars would be over before August, okay?
Yeah.
But even when you're playing, it's funny you said that, because even when you're playing Little League American Legion ball, if you're in the All-Stars or whatever, or travel squads or what have you, you're still thinking, if you're really into football, you're still thinking that everything you're doing is for football. That's the real season.
When did you start football practice when you were at Woodlawn?
So in high school, we started practice around August the 12th, roughly.
Okay. So you still had a little beach time at this time of year.
Yeah, but by the time you get in high school, as soon as school's over in May, you're thinking all summer is nothing but football in your mind. Nothing. You're
not even thinking vacation?
No, not me. I didn't, and I don't think most of them did, because they're thinking about hitting the gym. You're working out.
Yeah,
you're working out
sure.
with a football
I knew that.
team every day.
Yeah.
You've got weightlifting. You've got running drills that you have to do.
See, I would have worked out on the beach.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what you do, but not us. So my point is your mentality is there. So now, 50 years later, 40 years later,
yeah,
as soon as Jay Johnson and the LSU Tigers, came out of the dog pile,
yeah,
I started thinking football.
Right. See, I'm just the opposite. One of the things I love about covering college sports is that you get to change the sport. Like, covering the Saints is great, but those guys, they got to do that all year, I always liked having a different coach every few months, in a different sport. And I really believe in the seasons, And yeah, baseball's over, but it's still summer. And I'm a big Major League Baseball fan, and I played baseball as a kid. And I'm just not ready for football until it really starts, And as a reporter, it's not fun covering practice.
No, practice is not fun to be in either.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little more to write about, and your juices start going. But really, even when I was in my 20s, I really didn't like football until September, and when it started to get cooler. I'm not into the preseason stuff, but you have to be. You got to write about it. But I'm really not into it. Like training camp. I've covered Saints training camps, and even the guys who love the NFL. After the first couple of days of training camp, it's over because it's all redundant.
Yeah.
There's not much more that can happen. But I always liked that first Saints home preseason game. It was always around my birthday, and that was always a big landmark for me, going to that game. And then the first day of school tended to coincide with the first weekend of football, especially back in the day, because LSU used to not start until like September 10th sometimes. Yeah. And I always liked that because it was cooler, But these are the dog days, man. And we got SEC media days next week,
right?
Or 2 weeks, but it's funny. You'll have SEC media days for 4 days. Everybody will be talking about it, but then there's nothing. it's another few weeks before practice starts.
Well, but I always look at it, from another perspective. It's like I always like the athlons and the
Oh yeah,
Loonies,
that's a
all
big.
those
They're all
out now. They're
Yeah.
all coming out now.
They used to not come out till like August or July, maybe.
I remember them coming out in July. Here we are in July.
Yeah,
So they're all
That's
hitting,
a rite of summer.
Yeah, they're all hitting the stands, and that sort of pumps you up. And we're going to work on the Tiger Rag football guide as we speak, so it'll be out first week of August, and ready to go. But yeah, I'm thinking football right now, and apparently Garrett Nussmeier is too. He was at the Manning Passing Academy, and
I missed that for the first time in years, being in Natchitoches. But yeah, that's another great rite of summer is that Manning Passing Academy, and I mean this is the year for Brian Kelly, because I mean, I don't whoever the quarterback is in 26 probably not going to be as good as Nussmeier, right?
Well, I think he's on the team right now.
Maybe
because LSU's striking out, signing. They did not sign a quarterback in last year's signing class, of course, with Bryce Underwood's defection, and it left them sort of empty-handed. They did not sign one, and they have not signed one for the 2026 class, and they've struck out on their last two.
So this is
big
it,
attempts.
man.
Right?
They better win it this year or get to the playoffs.
So actually, the next year's quarterback is probably on the roster right now. With no underling, they're probably going to have to hit the transfer portal again.
Who do you think the next quarterback is?
Colin Hurley was really good coming out of college, and he came a year early. So.
All right, we'll be right back with more Tiger Rag Radio and Herb Vincent from the SEC office.
June is jumping at your East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Take part in the Summer Reading Challenge with incentives for kids, teens, and adults. They also have events galore for all ages, like Movies on the Plaza, the Cool Careers Summer Series, and so much more. Check out details online at ebrpl.com. That's ebrpl.com.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio, live from the Super Chevy Dealers Studio. We ought to have like cars going by when you say that.
That's why we got the new window, so we can look out at the cars going by.
They'd have to be cars like in the Jetsons that are in the air.
You don't have to reveal how high the window is.
I'm Glenn Guilbeau, editor of Tiger Rag, with executive editor of Tiger Rag, Todd Horne. Jeff Palermo on vacation. And now we're joined by Hall of Famer, Louisiana Sports Hall of Famer, former LSU SID and associate AD and LSU vice chancellor at one time, Herb Vincent. Herb, how are you, bud?
What's he
Glenn
doing?
Guilbeau, Hall of Famer Glenn Guilbeau.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by all these Hall of Famers.
Yes, yes, you are.
But what's Herb doing now? Is he retired or is he busy doing something?
He still works at the SEC office.
But you didn't tell him that.
Oh, well, everybody knows that. He's famous.
Okay.
Associate Commissioner of the SEC, Herb Vincent.
Okay, well.
That's right. There you go.
So, Herb.
Todd, you'll be in soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. But I do have a question for you. Herb. I have some real questions for you about the ceremony later on. But the first one I have is when you and Glenn were seniors working for the legendary Paul Manasseh, the legendary sports information director at LSU, Paul Manasseh. He was both of you guys as mentors. Did you imagine in your wildest dreams that you would be inducted into the Louisiana Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame, one day with Glenn Guilbeau?
Oh, no, I never thought I'd be in the first place, much less with Glenn. And so, we barely coexisted on the co-rec softball diamond, much less being in the Hall of Fame together.
But we did coexist at the Bengal on Highland Road.
Yes, that's right.
Or what about Ivar's? I remember many nights of Ivar's.
Well, that was later. That was
Glenn,
much later.
I went up to Saturday night because I did get my Wormburner's picture in the in my presentation video. I don't know if you noticed that. I didn't see your softball team presented in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow. That was cool. You did have some great pictures. That picture of you at one of the LSU baseball games when you were in school was cool too. I miss.
And you saw there was nobody in the stands.
That's right. That's right. Herb played for a softball team called the Worm Burners, and I was on another team that was kind of an athletic department team. I was on a team with some Metairie guys, and we destroyed the Worm Burners. I was on the lawnmowers. We beat you. We almost 10-run ruled you. I mean, I don't know how your memory is, but we did win.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. I'll remember that a different way. If you can prove that in a newspaper story, otherwise I'm not going to believe it.
Well, Herb, what was your impressions of the Hall of Fame weekend, and compared to with what you went in? Like, what were you expecting when you went in, and what did you think after what actually happened?
That's a good question. It was awesome. Yeah, we had a great time. My wife Jamie and daughter Kennedy accompanied me. We had a really good time doing all the events. I'd heard. Everybody tells you, I'm sure they did the same thing with you. Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Scooter was telling us, Scooter Hobbs was telling both me and Glenn when we were in Omaha how great the weekend was going to be, and other people have been telling us that. But until you experience it, you don't realize it, and you don't realize how many things you do until it's all over with. You look back on the previous 3 days, like, gosh, we did a whole lot.
Yeah, and when I was looking at the schedule, I wasn't that excited about bowling in Alexandria.
No, but they did a good job. I'm still wondering why they don't have a bowling alley in Natchitoches with you there, but you got to bust to Alexandria. But they did a nice job. They had the Mardi Gras music going, so that was kind of a high energy thing, and everybody had a good time. We had some awesome looking bowling jerseys we were wearing. So it was fun.
Did Kent Lowe put that together? Is that his brainchild?
I think that's got to have Kent Lowe's signature on it. I think he's the one that has the most interest in bowling. Yeah.
Well, the coolest thing was just meeting. They had all the inductees stay in the same hotel, so you kind of bumped into people at breakfast and stuff, and that worked out pretty cool. Like I got to know Bobby Swallow, the son of the great national champion boxer. But well, Herb, did you get a chance to visit with Nick much and Andrew Whitworth?
Not too much. I talked to Andrew a little bit at the Riverfest the night before when we were there, because he came in late. He wasn't at the initial press conference, and then I just talked to Nick a little bit, in that champagne toast that we had. That again is on the stage, but didn't get a chance to talk to him too much.
What were your thoughts of what Nick had to say? Because you were right there side by side with him when he was building that foundation for that LSU football program. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were while he was talking.
Yeah, I mean, he told some great stories about building it up and where it was. Some of the things I found interesting, his description of things, like when he said the football offices used to be in a bank building.
I didn't know what he meant by that. I don't know.
I guess because the athletic department kind of looks like a bank building. I guess that's what.
Okay.
But the football offices were actually not in a bank building; they were in the LSU Athletic Administration building, and so it's interesting to hear his perspective on how he thought things were going. When he got there.
I've heard this story, and I've never asked you about it. I've never talked to you directly about it, and I may get some of the facts wrong. But when he came down after he had been hired, didn't you pick him up at the airport and drive him to his initial press conference? And he was seeing Baton Rouge for the first time?
No, I didn't take him to the first press conference. Somebody else brought him to the athletic department. What I did take him to was shortly after he started was a Lee Feinswag show. Remember Lee Feinswag?
Yeah,
Sports Monday.
Yeah, so I took him down to the studio, and Lee will tell the stories as well. I took him to the Lee Feinswag show one night and picked him up outside the athletic department. He didn't say anything all the way there. When he gets to the show, it was a very, very dry interview. Lee really was having trouble, pulling anything out of him. After the show, Lee was like, God, that was the hardest interview I've ever had to do. Nick, I drive him back to the athletic department, and he didn't say anything all the way back. And when he gets out of the car, he says, "Hey, that was really great. We need to do that again."
He was talking to you inside.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's hilarious. Well,
but I'll tell you what he did say. What he did
yeah.
say on stage, that Jobs, what I remember was his concern about whether he had was doing the right thing when he got to LSU and taking the job. You remember Glenn? He said on stage that he called his wife and said, "Hey, this is not the way you described it at all."
Right.
She said, just get your butt in the press conference. Well, I remember we were in my office. If you remember, my office was right next to the door that went to the stage of the press conference. And so in my office, when he came in, was him and Jimmy Sexton and Joe Dean and probably Charlie Williams. I can't remember who all was there. And then they all left to go to the press conference. It was just me and Nick sitting there. And we still had a few minutes before. And he was sitting on the couch. And he had his head in his hands. And I was like, this guy doesn't look like he's real happy to be here.
Wow.
And,
that's amazing.
I said, are you all right? And he said, yeah, it's just a lot. It's just a lot right now. And so, but then he went in and he did the press conference, and he was, so I don't know if he was having second thoughts at the last minute, but I think by that time it was too late, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I think that does coincide because he may have made that phone call to Terry after he was in your office, or maybe he already had. But yeah, I distinctly remember sitting near our buddy Scott Farrell, who was also he was a junior in 1982-83 when Herb and he was another student assistant at LSU Sports Information, along with a guy named Bobby Swallow, but not the same Bobby Swallow who's the boxer.
Not the same one, not the boxer.
Yeah, Bobby went to Lehigh in Baton Rouge, but great guy. But I remember the way Nick's manners were and the way he was talking, and he seemed a little nervous. Scott kept saying, this is going to be another Bobby Cremens. Because, Bobby Cremens went to from Georgia Tech to which school? Clemson, maybe. And then he changed his mind.
Backed out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, all right. Oh, well, gosh, time flies when you're having fun. Well, Herb, thanks a lot for joining us, buddy. We will see you soon at SEC Media Days.
Great to see you in Natchitoches. See you in Atlanta.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Be back with more Tiger Rag Radio right after this.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio on the Super Chevy Deal in the Super Chevy Dealers studio. I want to thank Herb Vincent from the SEC office for joining us.
Man, that time flew by.
It did. That was great. Herb's great. Good talk from Natchitoches. And I'm Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag editor, with Todd Horne, Tiger Rag executive editor. And we are now joined by Blake Ruffino from AYS Sports on the Max Home Hotline. Blake, thanks for joining us this evening.
Sorry, my daughter had my phone. Blippi's a big part of our household, so I didn't hear the phone ring, and I guess she kept denying the call. I guess she was like, Daddy can wait.
What's Blippy? I didn't get that part. I don't
know. It's like a YouTube kids, hey, it's Blippy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, my only kid's like 27 years old now and lives in Ireland, so I don't know about Blippy. But
well, one day if you have grandkids, you're gonna know exactly who Blippy is. 2 years, I promise you.
So Blake, I mean, Glenn was just asking me as a former football player myself, when is it football season for me? And I was trying to explain to him that football season officially started when the dog pile cleared in Omaha. I started thinking football. And when we were talking about lining up guests for this show, knowing we're in the dog days of summer where there's not much to talk about anymore because there's no active sports going on, I'm thinking football. And I want to talk to my buddy Blake about the LSU football team because, number one,
I appreciate that.
You can tell me what's going on and why LSU can't recruit and sign any quarterbacks because they didn't get a quarterback last year in the signing class, and they're striking out left and right now. And is that a serious problem, or are we okay moving forward? Because this is Garrett Nussmeier's last year, and he may have a super year just like Joe Burrow did in his second season starting and Jaden Daniels did in his second year, but that cupboard kind of a little bit bare after he's gone, and I don't see it being replenished. Is that a problem or not?
If you ask me, I think anytime that you miss any position in back-to-back years from a high school perspective in recruiting, it's a big deal. I think if there is a position that it's the least of a big deal, it might be quarterback in the sense of, think about this, half of the league's quarterbacks are from the portal.
Right.
Now, you could have even used that last year. It was actually more kids from the portal in the SEC were from another school, with even Quinn Ewers at Texas, whatever you want to bring up. I don't know if quarterback necessarily is the big issue. What I do think is if you do that in other positions, yes, it's a massive issue, and you had to go out and spend an ungodly amount of money for portal players that you desperately needed because you lost your but pretty much your entire 2023 recruiting class. I don't know if quarterback is the big issue if you look from a 2027 high school perspective with Elijah Haven, Pop Houston, whoever, and then you can portal. The problem becomes at the current moment when Garrett leaves, and let's just say hypothetically, I don't know who's going to win, but Michael Van Buren beats out Colin Hurley for the starting job and Juwan Johnson. Do both of them pack their bags and head out?
Right.
That's where it becomes a massive issue. You don't have the depth. You're going to have to go get a portal quarterback, and you're going to have to explain to Michael Van Buren of why you need that portal quarterback, right? Why are you bringing a guy in from the portal that when it was supposed to be my job, or Colin Hurley, whoever it's going to be. So I do think from a depth perspective, without a question, it is. I mean, to tell LSU fans like, hey, your quarterback situation's in a dire need when you went in the portal and got 2 Heisman Trophy winners, I think might be a little bit much for me. Again, if there's any position from a recruiting aspect, it'd be that. You asked about football season starting. You know, we do Ruffino and Joe show, which is it's only college football 24/7, so I'm pretty much always in the mode. But I agree. You know, you get in the 4th of July, football really starts getting on the forefront of minds.
Well, Blake, you were in Omaha, right?
I was. If you remember, Glenn, I bumped into you at the airport when all the flights were going crazy.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Jesus. I was at 2 airports for hours. It's all a blur now, man.
Wait. So Blake, you can confirm, because I thought he was lying to me about all these cancellations, because he came in like 24 hours later than he was supposed to.
Yeah, I was at Barrett's the whole time.
No, I just looked up. I just went to one of the Delta ladies. I was like, listen, I need to get home. You canceled my flight. You've done this. And it was 6:53, and there was a 7 a.m. flight to Atlanta, and they had 1 seat, and then she gave it to me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So talk about luck of the draw, I guess.
Well, Blake, I really like the LSU roster throughout the roster. I like Nussmeier, obviously. I like the running backs. I like the receivers, and I like the returning receivers. And I like the defense. I think the defensive line is okay, but I really like the linebackers and secondary. But my question mark is the offensive line.
Mine too.
Yeah, and I think they brought in some portal players for the offensive line, but those are guys that LSU would not have recruited coming out of high school. Now maybe they're better where they were, but what is your gut feeling about the offensive line?
Well, you probably have what would be the second biggest test that any team could give you in week 1 from a front 7. You know, T.J. Parker at edge for Clemson, Peter Woods. I mean, look, Glenn, there's no not throwing him into the fire here up front early.
Who made that schedule? Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, look, they got 4 guys in Clemson's front 7 that are more than likely going to be top 25 picks in the NFL draft at some point. T.J. Parker, Peter Woods, Sammy Brown, Will Help, all have second-team or first-team All-American traits. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Peter Woods from EA Sports and T.J. Parker, both are their first-team All-American defensive linemen. Sammy Brown and Will Help are on their quote-unquote second team going into the season in reference to where they are. Glenn, I don't know how else LSU fans, if you hold up there, you should feel pretty good. The problem is they gave up 6 sacks in one spring game, and they only played a half. Right. The edge rush absolutely killed them. Can you run the football? Can you protect a quarterback that doesn't necessarily want to run a lot? Those are all questions, Glenn, that they got to ask on August the 3rd and start asking the questions. The only thing I would say is we didn't see Josh Thompson enough. We didn't see Braylon Moore enough at center. Did those 2 guys coming in make a difference? I don't know, but we're going to have to wait and find out.
All right, Blake, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry for being late about it. I really do. I apologize. Blippy gets me every time.
No problem. Have a good summer. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Y'all have a great one.
All right, we'll be back with more Tiger Rag Radio and LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie coming up shortly.
Tiger Rag Radio is back on the air, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Hello. Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag editor, with Todd Horne, Tiger Rag executive editor. Jeff Palermo is out on the beach somewhere, or maybe he's in Baton Rouge. Thanks to Blake Ruffino from AYS Sports. You know, we were talking about the Clemson game with him, and man, you know, there's a 12-game playoff. You don't need that big-time season opener anymore. You really don't. I don't know why they keep doing it. I mean, I love big non-conference games, but you don't need it in the first week.
And I don't know why they schedule it that way. But I will tell you this, and I know we kind of disagree on this. I don't think they have to win. It's not a must-win game against Clemson in the season opener in order to make the college football playoffs. Has no impact at all on the SEC as far as the record goes. So they could still win the SEC, still make the college football playoffs, the whole deal. But this team, with its composition of so many transfers coming in, so many,
they haven't lost the openers.
They're going to put. They haven't lost it, but
but the new players haven't lost the previous openers.
But you go on the road with the emphasis that Kelly is putting on it, and Garrett Nussmeier at the Manning Academy talking about it this week. They're emphasizing they want to win this game. They're making T-shirts, putting wall signs on the walls in the football operations building. If they go down there and they get their butts kicked, and it's going to be a kick in the gut for the team's chemistry and momentum, and they're going to have to adjust from that.
Will be.
They don't want that to happen.
Yeah, that'll be tough. But people are focused on the season opener, but the Florida State season opener that Kelly lost in 2022, he erased that as the season went on, particularly with the Alabama win.
I agree with that.
And the biggest loss that year was to that bad Texas A&M team.
Right.
And then last year, he lost again the opener to an average USC team.
Oh, it was a bad USC team.
Losing team, or maybe they were 500. But he erased that with the win over Ole Miss, and then he had the A&M loss, and really the biggest loss last year to me was the Florida game. That kind of ruined it. They still had a chance with that. We got to take a break?
Yeah, we got to.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's right up 7 o'clock. We got to take a break. We'll be back with Nate Yeskie this time after the break. LSU pitching coach right after this.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What
talk.
a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horne, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
We're players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Hello, welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag editor, with Todd Horne, Tiger Rag executive editor, and we're trying to get in touch with Nate Yeskie, LSU pitching coach, but we don't have him quite yet. But Nate and Jay Johnson and the rest of the staff haven't really had the time to celebrate the national championship yet. They've been put right to work for the in recruiting and the portal and so forth. But Nate, how are you?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Great. Thanks for joining us. Well, Nate, How exciting was it to get that national championship, particularly with your pitchers doing so great, Kate Anderson particularly, and then the rest of the staff? Just how soon did all that sink in?
I mean, you get bits and pieces of it each day. It was kind of fun to experience it in many different fashions. With our fan base being there and being so supportive, it felt a lot like we were playing a home game most every night. And then certainly when you see the guys go out there, and I remember for a lot of those guys, this has been a dream for them for their entire life since they knew that they wanted to play college baseball, and some of them having a chance to do this. And then I think about guys like Chase Shores, who was a part of the 2023 team and didn't get an opportunity to throw a pitch in Omaha. So that was always a focus for him, to get him back there. And I thought that, he threw the ball extremely well about the last month and a half. So when you look at really how that whole thing unfolded for all of those guys, many different layers to it, many different memories, and certainly all enjoyable ones, just getting a chance to watch those guys go.
Coach, this is Todd. You've been to Omaha now with 4 different teams. Jay's talked about it, and, talked about how you're obviously the best pitching coach in college right now. So, and I think you've earned that. And I don't think there's an argument out there with your record and what you've done and what you did with Cade and Anthony. But in Omaha this past season, I know that you have a blueprint of the way you want things to go with the matchups, who you're planning to pitch. Have you ever experienced a better plan actually happening the way it was supposed to from a pitching standpoint, the way it did this year? I'm just curious.
I mean, I think there's a lot of ebbs and flows to it. I think Mother Nature had something to say about it, just in account of the fact that we got split with that UCLA game, and that kind of threw things a little bit out of whack for us. So credit to those guys that were able to come back around. Zach Cowan was tremendous on the front end against Arkansas, and Jaden Newt bailed us a little bit there, and then the offense kind of picked up the things for us at the end. And Jacob Myers, even though you take into consideration the base hit, he made a good pitch. Guy put a good swing on it. Actually hit a ground ball like we were hoping, and just found a hole. But I think when you go start to finish, Cade was very sharp against Arkansas. Wasn't sharp, but very effective in the first game of the championship series. And then just Case and Evans. There's so many things to go back and look at, and I really give our defense a lot of credit. They played extremely well. Michael Braswell played as good at third base as you're going to see anybody play that position for the stretch that we were there at the 5 games. And even Jones, I think it was one of the things that's really gets forgotten. A lot of this stuff was people wanted to highlight, maybe his struggles, or that he just didn't swing the bat the way that he wanted to game 1 against Arkansas. But boy, did he play the dog out of first base.
Right.
So, it was a complete team effort in so many ways, just across the board. It was really a lot of fun to see it unfold the way that it did. And I think you go in there with a plan, and you go in there with an idea, and that's always plan A, but the reality of it is plan B. And it was pretty darn close to plan A from start to finish.
That's what it looked like. And I've got a ton of questions, especially about, as you've already started rebuilding and building your plan for next year, and you've got 3 left-handed pitchers already in the portal. We want to talk about them, but I have a question about Chase Shores. You talked about how he, just improved so greatly throwing the ball the latter part of this season, last month of this season in the reliever role, closer type role. Is there any chance at all that he could benefit from coming back for another year, maybe developing a couple more pitches and improving his value in the major leagues? Is there any hope of that?
I think there's always hope. I think the reality of it is, based on how well he performed down the stretch, and even going back to Hoover, he threw the ball extremely well against Ole Miss in the game that we lost there. But there's just the industry nowadays. They have opportunities to present to kids, and Chase will be met with a decision at some point, and he's in a good position for himself that if he chooses to, I think he'll be rewarded to go on and pursue his dreams of playing in the major league level. And if it doesn't align the way that he wants, we'll be sitting there with arms wide open, ready to welcome him back, because that's the thing that I think people need to remember is that this is always a work in progress. He came in with such a high bar set for him because of what people thought he should be able to do instantly. There's other teams with good players. And when you're 18 years old and you're going up against 22, 23, 24-year-old players who, in some circumstances, those are double-A type players. That's how old guys are when they're at that level of professional baseball. And then to deal with the setback with the injury year 2 and then be able to come back and contribute year 3, these things just take time for each one of those guys. And that's the thing, I think, if you flip it and you look at a guy like Cade Anderson, how well he performed, people forget too that he's only a sophomore.
Right.
What would he look like with another year of experience under his belt coming off of this season? So it all has a lot of ebbs and flows to it. There's a lot of different elements to each kid and the situations that they're going through. And Chase is going to have a very bright career no matter which path he chooses. And I'm just glad to see that he really started to come into his own. And I think as much as the way that he carried himself had everything to do with how he performed, in addition to the stuff that everybody can see. But for him, just I think how he took the mound, how he attacked the strike zone, how he believed in what he was doing. And you watch him walk off the mound, and you would swear that maybe he was a 5, 6, 7-year seasoned vet at the big league level. So I think the industry views him that way as well, that this is a guy who has a chance to move quick through somebody's organization.
Talking to Nate Yeskie here at Tiger Rag Radio on the Max Home Hotline, and he has been here 3 years. He's probably ready, and he just won a national championship. But Nate, LSU just got 3 guys through the portal this week, all left-handers: Santiago Garcia from Oregon, Ryler Smart from Tennessee, and Danny Lackenmeyer from Oregon, and Santiago Garcia was from
No, Santiago Garcia is from Oregon, Smart's from Tennessee, and Danny Lackenmeyer's from North Dakota State.
Oh, that's right. Okay, what can you tell us about those 3 guys, Nate?
Well, they're left-handed, and they're going to look good in a Tiger uniform. They each do some things that are unique, and we feel like they have ability. There's still some ceiling left for those guys to go, and we feel like we can raise the floor as well. We've seen these kids when they were younger, and again, this speaks to what we were discussing earlier with Chase, where everybody's kind of path for production and path for development is just unique in this day and age, especially with the portal. And whether it be a guy coming off an injury, a guy who went through a junior college route to get to where he was going, or a guy who was maybe not really on anybody's radar for the most part just a couple of years ago. And that's what makes this game so unique at times. And credit to those guys and their hard work they put in. Credit to our coaching staff, who's been working tirelessly since we landed, and even before that, just taking a look at how the portal was shaping up and really being able to address what we feel like are some needs that can help our team. And we were pretty light on the left-handed side this year, and you always want to be able to have some balance should you run into a team or a hitter that maybe doesn't handle one side of the mound or the other. So those guys, I think, are going to fit in really well with what we do, and it's our job to get them to be as prepared as they can for when their time comes that their name is called. And the nice part, too, is that they're going to carve out what their role is. They're going to carve out how many innings they give us, and that's always been kind of a belief of mine. It's something that Coach Johnson and I have talked about over the years when we've worked together is we go into this thing with kind of a blank canvas, and really how that unfolds is up to each player. So when those guys are able to go out there and produce and do what they want to do, they're going to create more opportunities. And we like the stuff, we like the people, we like the work ethic, and that's a good place to start.
Coach, what is William Schmidt doing this summer? Is he pitching somewhere, and what does he have to improve on to answer that potential and possibly be in the rotation next season?
Yeah, Williams, he's been working at getting stronger in the weight room. We've got some ideas for some development that we've been discussing, and we're kind of getting closer to making some decisions on where we're going to take that, whether that be to log some more innings this summer or to work on some things maybe away from the field that give him a chance to get better. But really for him, it's just establishing consistency. A lot of players, when they get into the SEC as a freshman or just college athletics as a freshman, they, I think, have an idea of what it should look like and what it's going to look like. And then when they experience it, it's nothing that they had anticipated. So for him, it's establishing consistency with his routines, whether that's catch play, whether that's the weight room, and then just going out there and trusting your stuff. And that's really kind of the same thing that we saw with Cade from last year. And for William, if we can speed up that process, that is going to be really kind of the focus for him, is to make sure that he has a productive fall and hopefully able to carry that over in the spring.
How much does William being on the team with Cade this year and seeing how far Cade came, and did Cade communicate that to William all throughout the season? So does that help William in his quest that he's beginning right now into next year?
Absolutely. I think we made a point to make sure that those guys room together on the road so that you could kind of be an understudy and get a sense of what's this guy doing, how does he do it, what makes him tick, and you're pretty much riding shotgun. So whether you're watching that guy throw his bullpen, play catch, or really do anything, how he goes about his business is certainly a good blueprint for, all right, well, I'm going to put my own kind of spin on certain things, but boy, this guy did this and this guy did that, because success leaves clues. The guys who are very successful in what they do, I imagine Nussmeier's watched a lot of film, got a pretty good idea of watching how Jaden Daniels went about his business. And, each guy that comes through whatever sports program it is at LSU, there's upperclassmen that do things, and it's what you want to make of it from there. So once you get a good understanding of what those guys are doing, and William had that probably the best seat in the house to see how that young man in Cade was going about his business, then I think that'll bode well for him, because we refer to it as inexpensive experience. It didn't cost William anything whether Cade had some struggles or had some success. It was really something that he could pocket and take on and be able to really gain some perspective from.
That makes sense. This is probably the last question I can ask you, but what is your plan for Gavin Guidry for next year, coming off his injury this year?
Well, it's making sure that he's good. He's done working hard since he got out of the doctor's office, and for Gavin, much like the others that I mentioned before, how he continues to advance his game will be relative to what he invests in it. He works hard at the things that he wants to do. We thought he was throwing the ball really good and was going to impact us, and we kind of scratched our head thinking, man, if we had him here, if we had him there throughout the season, we feel like we would have won a few more ball games. So I know he's anxious to get back, and we're anxious to get him too.
Well, you still won the national championship, buddy. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It when they say it just means more, it does. And our fans and the people that support our programs certainly showed that.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Nate Yeskie, LSU pitching coach. Have a good one.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks. You too.
We'll be back with more Tiger Rag Radio right after this.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Tracks.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag editor, with Todd Horne, Tiger Rag executive editor. Well, what did you think of some of what Nate was saying? It seems like they got everything just rolling, man.
It does, and you know, we already talked about how Jay was on the show last week, and talked about how, you know, they were like only 3 days removed from winning the national championship, and hadn't even had the celebration yet in Alex Box Stadium. And he literally was talking about building the roster for next year. And now we're a week later, which must be like, you know, in some type of time machine, time lapse. It's like, seems like it's 7 years later or 7 months later or whatever. But I think they have a solid plan. I think this is speculation, but I think they targeted right, you know, Smart and Lackenmeyer and Garcia, the left-handed pitchers in the transfer portal, specifically because they knew all these players for years.
Oh, yeah.
He alluded to it. And they're going to look really good, as Nate said, in Tiger uniforms, because that's exactly who they want. They want to develop them a certain way. And I think he has that plan for Schmidt. I think he has that plan for these transfer portal players coming in, the pitchers moving up on the staff currently that are part of the, you know, returnees. I think they have a really solid organization right now, not just with the pitchers, but since we were talking to Nate, I'm focusing on the pitchers, but with the entire team. And I think, like you said at the beginning of the show, you know, Jay's probably going to win 5 national titles, and he may do it before he's 60.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to worry about him leaving either, because you know, LSU, unlike the other sports, really, LSU baseball is a landing spot. I mean, I don't think you're going to have somebody from. I mean, maybe Jay, you know, maybe Texas could get him 10 years from now, or maybe, you know, I don't know, USC, you know, because he's from California. But I just don't see it happening. But you know what was amazing about what Nate said too? He said we needed left-handers. Hell, he had quite a few left-handers on the staff.
I know.
You know, and Coach Maneri, he had a couple of seasons and they were good, and they didn't have any left-handers. You know, so it's just amazing how they're able to just bam. They got 3 left-handers because there's not a lot of left-handers.
I know.
You know? So
I know.
So
and
they're
remember in Jay's first year here, they had no left-handers.
right.
None.
Yeah. That's not going to happen again.
Right.
And he look at all the left-handed hitters he has too. So that's going to remain. But
the other big thing, that
go
stood
ahead.
out to me was when I asked him about Chase Shores, and if
they knew he was leaving for.
But it sounded to me like it's still a chance he could.
Well,
come back.
he was. I think he was.
Yeah,
I think they know he's gone. I think they know he could change his mind.
I think it depends on where he gets picked, and if he likes what's in front of him.
He's ready though. I can tell you, just from being in Omaha,
Well,
I've
described
talked
him as
about
ready.
it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got to remember, he's been here 3 years, and he's probably getting a little antsy. Plus, he won the national championship, and he got the last out. So you can't really do much better than that. I mean, I know what you're saying. And I even asked that. I said, he'll be in the rotation next year, and he'll get better. But the way they see it is, I'll get better when I'm on a pro team.
Yeah, but he only had 2 pitches. He had a fastball, and he had a slider. If he could develop
he had a changeup.
Yes, effective. Okay.
Yeah.
If he could improve that effectiveness, and he's got still another year of eligibility left before he runs out of that leverage year. So he's in a good position either way.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it really comes down to like Nate said, if he falls in the right place and he wants to consider coming back, we'll open our arms up. We'll give him what.
Yeah. I think he ought to come back because he hasn't done it as a starter yet. He hasn't been a dominant starter. His stuff has been flashes, you know.
Do you think he could be as good as Skeens was?
I
know Skeens was a once in a lifetime type pitcher.
I don't think so. But I think he could.
Physical tools.
Yeah, he looks like him. But there's a lot of guys that look like him that aren't that good. But I think he could be a dominant pitcher, and I think he could be a starter in Major League Baseball. All right. Well, let's see. We'll be back with
June is jumping at your East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Take part in the Summer Reading Challenge with incentives for kids, teens, and adults. They also have events galore for all ages, like Movies on the Plaza, the Cool Careers Summer Series, and so much more. Check out details online at ebrpl.com. That's ebrpl.com.
Now, back to Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Hello, welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau. We have a recorded segment at this point with Todd Horne interviewed Wilson Alexander of the Baton Rouge Advocate, great young sports writer, about the new revenue sharing going on at LSU and around the country.
Hey, Wilson Alexander with theadvocate.com is on with us right now. Wilson, you kind of broke a big story a couple of days ago. The House settlement has finally been approved by the NCAA. You got Kelly Zinn, the never get her title right, Deputy Athletic Director, COO under Scott Woodward, to talk about how LSU's going to allocate those $20.5 million. Anything stand out in particular to you about your conversation with Kelly and the article you wrote in The Advocate?
I guess a couple of things stand out. One is that LSU is going to give some money through revenue sharing to every team on campus. Kelly says that that's not the case everywhere. It's hard to totally verify that, exactly how many teams are doing what. Not every team talks about their plan and all that kind of thing. A lot of other SEC schools are doing the similar model to LSU in that 75% of the money goes to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and then 5% to everybody else. But Kelly said that it's unique that LSU is splitting up that 5%, that final 5%, amongst truly everybody else. It does raise some questions about, how much money is there to go around for baseball, gymnastics, softball, all track and field, all these teams at a place like LSU that we have the fan base that wants to see all of them succeed. Kelly says that there's enough for all of them and that they'll continue to fund those sports as long as LSU fans want them to be competitive. The other thing that I think that stands out is that LSU believes that it is actually going to end up helping players earn more than $20.5 million and significantly more than $20.5 million, but no longer through the NIL collective body traditions that has been set up for the past few years, but through finding them third-party NIL deals. That's kind of the new strategy that they have.
Now, Louisiana is one of the states that the legislature approved a law that says that LSU or state schools in Louisiana can actually pay NIL funds directly to the students. Does that figure into her calculations in any way?
Well, what that also makes me think about, I'm not totally sure exactly how those things match up here, because what makes me think about it in some ways is that what they're technically doing is paying students for the right to use their NIL.
Right.
It's not exactly like an employee contract. And so they're doing that. But also LSU nowadays is able to facilitate those NIL deals a lot more. But what the officials, Kelly and others, repeatedly said was that it's this Playfly Max program that they joined, where they now have some employees on campus who their whole thing that they're supposed to do is find these third-party NIL deals, often through LSU's already existing corporate sponsors and then other businesses who might want to get involved, and that is really kind of opened up for them and how much they're able to help with that on campus.
Now, Playfly has been LSU's partner when it comes to multimedia for several years. They run their website, they run sponsorships already, corporate sponsorships, and so that this will be an additional agreement that they'll have with Playfly moving forward?
Yes, it is. They signed up for a contract that goes into the 2030s. That happened earlier this spring, and so it is on top of what Playfly already
it sort of provides for LSU. There's multiple schools that have sort of signed on to this because Playfly has been, for many schools, a longtime multimedia rights partner, and LSU is no different in that. That's going to be a really critical piece of what's coming now, because there are these supposed restrictions on collectives, so we'll see exactly how well those can hold up.
From your story, it says there's going to be logos, corporate logos, on the 25-yard lines in Tiger Stadium this year. I'm assuming that's a significant revenue boost, and I'm assuming that's going to come through Playfly, more than likely.
So that's going to, in terms of the revenue that it generates, Clay Harris, LSU's WAD for revenue generation, so that it's multiple millions of dollars a year. He would not give a specific number, only that sort of general, seven figures plus type of thing, but that it is a significant stream of revenue for LSU. That's not something that LSU, had on its field last year. You saw it on the basketball floor. You saw it on a lot of other teams that had that, went ahead and did it as soon as it was okayed by the NCAA last year. LSU waited until this season, but now that's going to be on the field at Tiger Stadium on the 25-yard line. A couple other things is that you could even have something at midfield if you wanted. You could have something along the back lines of the end zones if you chose to do so. LSU won't have either of those things, Harris said. And he also noted that they are actually going to incorporate LSU's purple and gold into this logo advertisement, which is, I think, a little bit different from what we've seen elsewhere. And so perhaps maybe it'll look a little bit more seamless on the field than some of these other advertisements have, but we'll just kind of have to see once we finally get to that first home game.
But no indication who the sponsor will be yet.
No, they said that they have lined up this sponsor, but that they have not. They declined to share the name.
Now, those on-field sponsorships and a number of other sponsorships are, I'm sure, in the works. That's going to help LSU offset what they're projecting to be an $8 million first-year physical deficit in 2025 as it relates to, because of the revenue sharing, correct?
Correct, yes. This is usually profitable athletic department. LSU generates, in the last available figures in 2024, was in excess of $200 million of revenue. Now, they spent, quite a bit of money as well, which is why they ended up with, I think, a surplus of around a little over $1 million. And now they're projecting a deficit over this next fiscal year, really this next school year, of $8 million. And that's certainly different. And yet Kelly Zinn was quick to say that they think that that budget will get balanced within the next couple of years, as early as fiscal year 2027, because of things like, yes, this advertisement. If the NCAA starts allowing jersey patches, LSU is going to act quickly to put those on every single uniform on campus. And that is something else that Clay Harris said would generate multiple millions of dollars a year. LSU has cut a little bit of its spending, but they aren't doing much of that from what we can tell. I mean, Kelly Zinn said they cut about $3 million. That's not a lot in the grand scheme of things for that kind of athletic department. What they're really trying to do is just gain more and more money.
Yeah, wasn't it Texas A&M that pretty much cut like several senior athletic department officials and their full salaries, longtime officials? So LSU's not doing anything nearly that drastic.
Correct. Kelly said that they would, there would be situations where if somebody were to leave and that kind of attrition occurs, that maybe they aren't going to refill a position. But they have not made any cuts like Texas A&M did.
Was there any talk when you had your conversation with Kelly regarding the new sports betting tax revenue and if that would be helpful that Louisiana put in place, basically raising the tax revenue on gambling and betting that occurs inside the state of Louisiana and then splitting that? I think they estimated it to be $24 million worth of revenue spread across all the state universities.
Yeah, no, it didn't really come up too much with her. I asked Clay about it, and he said how that would be, helpful, certainly. But actually, a conversation I had recently with Southern's athletic director, that was something that he mentioned as being really helpful for them because they don't make the same kind of money that LSU does. I think because LSU is such a profitable athletic department already, that it maybe will have a more significant impact on all the other schools in the state who probably don't generate the same kind of money that LSU does.
Okay, that was part of Todd Horne's pre-recorded interview with Wilson Alexander from the Baton Rouge Advocate on the new revenue sharing going on at LSU and across the country. And we will be back with the second part of that interview right after this timeout here on Tiger Rag Radio.
How you doing? This is Snoop Dogg.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are tuned in.
Talk LSU sports, interviews, opinions, and your calls around the Tiger Nation.
Baton Rouge was a life for me, home with LSU Tigers.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio.
We love to score and get highlights and championships and play to win.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Hello, welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, the Super Chevy Dealers studio, and we're now going to rejoin our pre-recorded interview between Todd Horne of Tiger Rag and Wilson Alexander of the Baton Rouge Advocate.
One of the effects of this new House settlement agreement was that it sort of wrangles in and puts some barriers around NIL, so it's no longer going to be so much the wild west. There will actually be guardrails around it, and that involves the College Sports Commission. Could you go into a little detail about how that's going to work, the College Sports Commission?
Yeah, the College Sports Commission is this new entity that is set up by the power conferences to run this new system. They're going to be sort of policing everybody's spending under the cap and are supposed to be able to enforce, penalties if teams go over their cap numbers. They're also supposed to, and this is what's going to really be critical, is track and run this NIL clearinghouse called NIL Go, which launched back on June 11th. Every NIL deal over $600 now has to go through that to be reviewed and approved. And if it's not, then, an athlete has a few different options. Ultimately, they can request arbitration for a neutral decision about their NIL deal and whether or not it serves a valid business purpose and falls within a reasonable range of compensation is what the commission has defined as sort of the what needs to be judged. And yet there's a lot of questions as to how one actually decides what is reasonable here. And that's probably going to be lawsuits over that. A lot of people are sort of anticipating that within the college sports space. In theory, though, that's how it's supposed to function, which would eliminate the sort of just pay-for-play agreements under the guise of NIL where, an athlete gets quite a bit of money in exchange for doing very little for that money. And so if they're able to get back to actually having to act on the deliverables that college athletes are supposed to, do in exchange for the NIL deals, then perhaps maybe it'll be more like it was intended to be back in 2021.
So if I'm understanding correctly, some of the wild deals like the one that Bryce Underwood, who was the Michigan high school quarterback who had committed to LSU for over a year last year, and then at the last minute balked and ended up signing with Michigan for a reported $10 to $12 million. It would go to help eliminate those types of wild deals?
Well, that's what Kelly Zinn indicated. Speaking recently to the Baton Rouge Rotary Club, she mentioned, not by name, but the whole situation with Bryce Underwood. Somebody in the crowd asked a question about, that guy who went to Michigan for $6 to $8 million, and she interjected and said 10. She used that example for that very reason, that is the sort of situation that could be stopped under this, sort of new system. However, Michigan could still line up third-party NIL deals. Maybe Larry Ellison signs Bryce Underwood on to be, a representative of something for his company or something like that, and they're able to still sort of set up, a lucrative package for Bryce Underwood. And LSU can do the same thing, but perhaps maybe some of those numbers come down to maybe more of a, again, reasonable range of compensation. But again, it's going to be hard to exactly define what that is because people are going to certainly question an entity for limiting their ability to earn.
Was there any discussion with Kelly Zinn when you were speaking with her about the fact that even though now that the universities are actually able to directly pay the athletes, that they're not employees? They don't have full benefits of an employee, and if that's going to present a problem in her mind moving forward, or was there any discussion at all about that?
We discussed that in the way in which it affects a buyout in a contract that the university would have with an athlete. One of the things I asked her was, how would you go about recouping that money when an athlete inevitably transfers? Because that is still a big piece of this. With the portal being, still unlimited transfers and very few restrictions on that, LSU's going to sign players to these deals and then they're going to leave. So how do you go about doing that when they're not athletes? And you are sort of limited in your ability to, enforce their contract. She acknowledged the difficulty of that without getting super specific. She said that LSU is going to have ways, the way that in which they wrote the contract, they'll have ways to get that money back while they're still at LSU. it's going to be interesting to see exactly how that works out for that very reason. They are not athletes. And if they leave the university, then who is LSU to say that, they need that money back? Because then you get very closely into the whole pay-for-play argument, which is not supposed to be allowed.
Yeah, so that you said they're not athletes. They are athletes. They're just not employees. Right?
Excuse me. Yes, thank you. Getting all my terms mixed up these days.
That's okay. Did Kelly explain to you or share with you whether she thinks this is good for LSU or is this more of a challenge for LSU? What was her overall attitude towards these changes?
Her attitude and that of every other official I spoke to and have spoken to recently is that this is really good for LSU. Not just good, but like great for LSU is how they're, at least what they are projecting publicly, because LSU was behind in the collective era for a number of years, where LSU paid the football roster out of the collective $5.5 million during the 2024 season. That was way behind a lot of the top teams in the SEC. We know Ole Miss spent more than 10. Obviously, Ohio State's athletic director said that their number was around 20. And LSU made up a lot of ground for this season to be able to sign the kind of transfer portal class that it did and retain some of the players that it did, like Garrett Nussmeier and Harold Perkins. But that is not viewed as a really sustainable way to do things when you don't have the sort of like oil money in Texas and some of these other really, numerous Fortune 500 companies sort of within your donor base, or just one person like Texas Tech has with Cody Campbell to be able to just sort of write blank checks. That is something that not having to rely on that system, LSU views as a real advantage, because we have seen LSU be successful in helping market its athletes and help those athletes get these sort of third-party NIL deals that are now, they think, expected to be the backbone of what you are able to do in terms of an NIL package for an athlete. So if that is the case, if all this sort of works as it's supposed to, then LSU and Kelly Zinn really do believe that LSU is in a great position here moving forward, because if they are able to go and set up these third-party NIL deals like they anticipate, then they'll be able to make sure players are getting the kind of money that attracts them to these top programs these days.
So in a nutshell, Kelly Zinn and LSU believe this is good for LSU. It helps sort of standardize and legitimize the business in a way. And she feels like they'll be able to balance their budget, I think, by 2027. Is that correct?
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that as a bipartisan observer?
I see what they're saying, in that this could really help alleviate some of the challenges that LSU has faced, especially in football and in men's basketball, with having the money to go and sort of compete to financially fund the rosters the way that you need to. I mean, like I said, they had not been at the level that they needed to for a few years, really going until the fundraising push that occurred over the last half of last year and into this year really, took place. Until that happened, they were behind. And so if they don't have to lean on the collective and don't have to keep asking those donors for money for this purpose, then I do think it can be, something that's successful. LSU's obviously won a bunch of championships lately. It's not like the athletic department was hurting, but they need to kind of improve in football in particular and get to the playoff in football and to start to, field a more competitive men's basketball program. If it's helpful for those two areas and LSU is able to continue to do everything it's been doing with women's basketball and baseball and gymnastics and all the other sports, then yes, it can work out. But I guess we'll see. Time will tell.
Thank you, Wilson Alexander of theadvocate.com, for answering a lot of questions, getting to the bottom of a lot of questions. But it sounds like there's still a whole lot of questions to come.
There certainly are. One of the things Kelly noted was that it's really probably going to take at least a year to sort of figure out, that reasonable range of compensation. What does that mean? What does that look like? Where does the market settle? It's going to take a while, and that's just one of many.
All righty, Wilson. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Wilson.
Okay, welcome back to Live Tiger Rag Radio. Good interview, Todd, and very informative. I had not heard that number that LSU just had its payroll last year for NIL was $5 million. I had heard that Ole Miss was $10 million and Ohio State was $20 million.
And we're just talking football.
Right, exactly, yeah. So Brian Kelly, really, that was quite an upset when he beat Ole Miss. That was a payroll upset and a point spread upset.
And on the other side, on the flip side, when they lost to Florida, It was a equally upsetting experience.
What was Florida's payroll for football?
More than LSU's. I don't know the exact number.
Well, if it was more than LSU, then they should have lost to them. Is what I'm saying.
But they have Billy Napier as their coach versus Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly should always beat Billy Napier.
Billy Napier is a rising young coach, much like Jay Johnson. We'll talk more about that after the break.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. Well, wrapping up the show now. I want to thank Wilson Alexander of the Baton Rouge Advocate for a great interview. What a fine young sports writer Wilson continues to be at the Advocate, and thanks to Blake Ruffino at AYS Sports, another young sports writer. Very informative on the football program and team, and Herb Vincent from the SEC office, and national championship coach Nate Yeskie, LSU pitching coach. Any final thoughts, young Todd Horne?
Ready for football.
I'm not, man. I'm ready for the Astros. That's what I'm going to be focusing on.
Do they have a chance to make it back to the World Series this year?
You know, they're running away with their division, but they're probably not quite a World Series team yet. But no, we'll also be turning it on the football preseason guide, going to be coming out in August, and the next issue of Tiger X should be out this week. That's all about Omaha and the results from Omaha and what led to Omaha for the Tigers. So, thanks a lot, and join us next week on Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag is everywhere. Online at TigerRag.com. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/TigerRagMagazine. Or follow us on Twitter at Tiger_Rag.